Witch in Charm's Way, a cozy mystery audiobook, written and narrated by R.K. Dreaming. Part 20. Chapter 11, Interview with the Dampire. "Hey, there you are," said a voice behind me. I spun around to see Jasper Echo coming towards me with a big grin on his face. I turned back to Oberon and his friends, sure that Jasper must be talking to them. An interruption was the last thing I needed when Oberon was about to run off. But it was me who Jasper came up to, tapping me on the shoulder and saying, "I was hoping to bump into you." I stared at him and said bluntly, "Why?" Behind us, Petra burst into laughter. "Why do you think?" "Shut up, Petra," said Jasper. "The ladies' man is always after ladies," said Petra, "and you are the newest lady in town." "Petra," said Jasper, in tones of despair, "stop it, you're ruining it for me." I shouldn't have been surprised they knew each other. Jasper was Baina, like Petra. He turned to Oberon, who was still on his feet, and said, "You're not leaving, are you?" "Yeah," said Oberon. "Stay," Jasper insisted. "I'm here all by my lonesome. I'll join you guys." He pushed Oberon back down into his seat. "Cheer up, buddy. I know it's been hard. I heard what happened. You should at least finish that cake before you go. It'll make you feel better." Oberon looked down at his cake, contemplating it as if it was more appealing now that Jasper had said it might help. He looked like a lost little sheep in need of someone like Jasper to help him find his way. Gone was the effortless, cheery confidence he'd had just a couple of nights ago. I was glad when Oberon stayed in his seat. I wasn't done talking to him yet. The longer he stayed, the better my chance at getting the truth out of him. It looked like Jasper's interruption was not going to be a bad thing after all. "I'll get you some more truffles," I said to the group brightly. "Do you know what you're having, Jasper?" "Whatever you recommend," he said with a cheeky grin and a wink. Petra rolled her eyes. "Flirt," she said. "You know it," said Jasper, taking a seat beside her and pulling off his jacket, which was damp from the rain outside. Jasper was tall and lean and blonde and effortlessly styled, and looked every bit as cool as the other three sat at the table, though they were a decade younger. Jasper had never had problems fitting in with people. He always belonged anywhere. Now that I was glad of his arrival, I patted him on the shoulder and said, "You all stay right there, and I'll be back with some fresh drinks and those truffles. And that fairy kale juice for you, Petra?" She smiled and nodded. I hurried off to get everything and was surprised when I felt a tap on my shoulder again. Jasper had followed me. "I'll give you a hand," he said. "That's really not necessary," I said, glancing behind him at the table, worried that Oberon might walk off. "Yes, it is," he whispered in a quiet voice. "Don't think I haven't noticed you're trying to get something out of them. Tell me what it is and maybe I can help." I stared at him in surprise. "Why do you want to help me?" "Why do you think?" he retorted. There was that smile crooking up the corners of his lips again. He was so attractive and effortlessly flirty. It had never been me who had been the object of his affections before. I stared at him suspiciously. He reached out with the tip of his finger and pulled one corner of my lips up into a smile. "There," he said, "that's better." "Don't even think about it," I said. "I'm not interested." He didn't even look disappointed. "Then I'll just have to try harder," he said. I couldn't help but laugh. Flirty banter with Jasper Echo had been the stuff of dreams in my teenage years. It was so strange to be over it now. He came with me into the kitchen and helped me load up a tray with the drinks that I had promised and a little bowl full of truffles. "You like the Black Forest Gâteau," I told him. "Is that what you like?" he asked. "Sometimes, but mostly I'm all about the double chocolate fudge cake." "Then that's what I'll have." No, I insisted. I think you'll much prefer the Black Forest Gateau. He shrugged. Your wish is my command. I looked at him. That had sounded suspiciously like he knew about our family's fairy tale curse, and I didn't like the idea. We kept it firmly under wraps. It was not the sort of thing that you wanted everyone to know about. I didn't much enjoy being the object of people's pitiable speculation. But Jasper's sea-green eyes were sparkling and innocent. It didn't look like he had been teasing me. Not about the curse, at least. I scooped up a spoonful of the Black Forest Gateau slice that I had put on a plate for him. Incoming, I said, and stuffed it into his mouth. His eyes went wide and he said, Yum! I grinned. I knew you would like this. You always did like pretty, decadent things. Oh, yeah? How come you were noticing what I always liked? Stop it, Jasper, I said with a grin. I couldn't help it. I'll stop it if you tell me what you want to weasel out of Oberon Malte and his friends. I considered him. Was this a trick, or did he really want to help me? The thing was that he was just so very likeable. My instincts were telling me to trust him. I decided to go for it. I filled him in on the discrepancy between what they had told Agent Constantine about their whereabouts on the night that Lily had died and what Beachbum had said. They didn't tell Agent Constantine that they went to Club Nocturne, I said. So I was wondering why they would have hidden that fact. Let's find out, said Jasper with a grin. Picking up the loaded tray, he marched towards the cafe door with it. I was about to follow him when movement behind me caught my eye. The kitchen had 2 doors, and the one that led back towards the family quarters was open. I furrowed my brow. I was sure that I had just seen movement back there. You go ahead, I said to Jasper. I'll catch up. Don't be long, he said, and marched off. I hurried through the other doorway into the family quarters. I didn't know what I expected to find, but it wasn't Paolo Ambers skulking around in the corridor. Can I help you? I said a little bit angrily. I glanced back towards the kitchen door. Had he been eavesdropping on us? I hoped not. It seemed too far away. Paolo flushed red. Sorry, he said. The toilets were busy, so I thought I'd use one of the family ones, and then I got lost. I looked at him suspiciously. Nothing seemed out of place. No appended trash cans or anything. I cocked my head. Did you find one of the family ones? I said, unable to keep the sharpness out of my tone. He nodded. I'm really sorry, he said again. We used to be allowed to come back here with Lorcan when we were kids. I should have realised that it's an intrusion on your privacy now. It is, I said stiffly, so don't do it again, please. He nodded. You've got it. I let him walk ahead of me back into the cafe. I didn't feel entirely comfortable at the idea of having an incubus follow me, even Paolo Ambers. The break-in had made me jumpy. Jasper was back at the table with the others, engaging them in cheerful conversation. They looked far happier talking to him than they had with me. Clearly he knew them fairly well. Pull up a chair, he said merrily when he saw me, and then got up to get me a chair himself from a nearby table. It turned out that I wasn't the only one who found Jasper trustworthy. He was so charming that he didn't even have to use a hint of his allure to make people like him. The busy background buzz of the cafe, with the tinkling plates and cutlery, and voices raised in mellow conversation, seemed to have soothed Oberon and his friends into a sense of security. Within 5 minutes of easygoing conversation, Jasper had persuaded Oberon and the others to open up. When Oberon admitted that they had been at Club Nocturne on that night, but had just forgotten to mention it, Jasper said sympathetically, It's not your fault. I would have been confused too. It must have been such a shock with what happened. Petra nodded. She looked embarrassed. Her eyes kept darting towards Oberon almost pleadingly. He glared at her. I was beginning to feel a little bit uneasy. I liked Oberon, and he had liked Lily so much. It couldn't have been him. And yet Petra clearly thought that Oberon was hiding something. "So what happened?" said Jasper affably. "I mean, the club must have been pretty busy. There would have been loads of people who saw you guys there all night long." Oberon nodded. Petra said, "It was really stuffy in there, lots of smoke. We decided to go out and hang outdoors around the back. There's this rooftop. It's a bit of a construction site at the moment because Oberon's dad is having an infinity pool and hot tubs and stuff built out there. So no one else was allowed out there, just us." I gave Jasper a significant look. He must have read my mind because he asked, "Was Beach Bum with you?" Petra shook her head. "He'd gone by then. It was just the four of us and Lily." "Lily talked Lorcan into making us a fire," said Oberon abruptly, "using some of the construction timber to keep us warm. I didn't mind. It would have made my dad mad if he'd seen it, and these days making my dad mad is all right by me." Petra looked at Oberon sympathetically. "Is that why you didn't tell Agent Constantine?" said Jasper. "He's not going to care if you vandalized your own dad's club, is he?" Oberon shrugged. "Yeah, but my dad will." Oberon's dad was a full-blown vampire patriarch, hundreds of years old, a creature of the night, and not a very nice guy by all accounts. A charming but deadly rake, I had heard. Jasper grimaced. "Yeah, I can see why you didn't want your dad finding out." Petra looked relieved now that Oberon had admitted to this. "We were only there for a couple of hours," she said, "and then we left afterwards." "Together?" asked Jasper. Petra shook her head. "Paolo and I left together." She looked at her brother and he nodded. They didn't say anything else. Jasper looked at Oberon and Lorcan. He raised his eyebrow. "What about you guys?" Oberon looked sulky. Lorcan gave an awkward laugh. "Oberon wished he didn't have to leave alone," he said, half-jokingly. "Shut up," said Oberon, a little resentfully. "Let's face it, man," said Lorcan. "If Lily had gone home with any of us, we would have been happy, but she always chose you." "She didn't that night," said Paolo, glancing a little nervously at Oberon. Oberon scowled. "I wish she had. She would have still been alive." "So, you went home alone?" I asked tentatively. I had stayed quiet this whole time, afraid that me speaking up would make the others shut up. But this time Oberon nodded. "I asked her to come back with me, but she said she wanted to stay a while and enjoy the fresh air or some crap." He looked very sour at having to admit to this. Lorcan clapped his friend on the shoulder sympathetically. Oberon shrugged Lorcan's hand off angrily. "Oberon and I left together," said Lorcan. "Lily was still there when we left, alone." Oberon rubbed his face. "I wish it had been different." "Oh, come on, Oberon," said Petra with a scowl. "She blew you off. You know that she stayed because she was waiting for somebody else." My eyebrows shot up. "Fresh air," Petra snorted. "As if." Oberon glared at Petra. Petra looked at him defiantly. "Oberon won't admit it, but we all knew Lily was seeing someone else. Why do you think she wanted to stay there alone? She just didn't want to have to tell Oberon that she was hooking up with some other guy." Hi, this is the end. Comment absolutely fabulous, darling, to let me know that you've been here. Thanks for playing along.